Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Winter 2021 Writing Quarterly Wrap-Up. I am in a new location because, well, when I started BookTube a few years ago, I decided for a couple of reasons to film in my bedroom. The one is it's just really easy. I just film right at my desk, and it's easy to grab things, and it's easy to sit there. And my cat Leia liked hanging out on the bed behind me, so I figured, she could be the draw, the cute cat to get you to watch the videos. But Leia passed on a few years ago, and my cat Missy doesn't really do that. So I've just been filming there because of habit. But I think every once in a while, like how weird that is, just to film with the bedroom behind me when I'm mostly filming bookish content. I guess this is technically AuthorTube content, but, kind of in the same vein here, as it were. And, the brand for BookTube is to film by your bookcases, and that's how people know what you're talking about. My bookcases aren't necessarily in a place that's easy for me to film at least not without, I guess, a little bit of planning, and so I've been trying to do that, and this is my test video, as it were. I'm also right next to a window. Right now it's, daylight and sunlight is streaming in, although oftentimes I film at night, so who knows what the lighting will be like, but I don't think people will come to my channel for the lighting. But anyway, on to the content of this video. I make these videos every 3 months in order to track my writing goals and talk about what I've been up to in this quarter in terms of writing. And a big draw is that I have to hold myself accountable to goals I set 3 months ago, and if I don't reach them, a certain Game of Thrones character is going to come out and shame me. I divide these videos into 4 sections. There'll be little marquees dropping down at the beginning of each one, so here we go. I think it's been a pretty good quarter, after all. I mean, what better way to start a new year than with a story publication? That was pretty wild. My short story, Jewish Adult, was published at Sad Girls Club Literary Blog. I got the news really shortly before it was published, so it was really exciting. Especially since I'd had that story out on submission for over a year, and it's just such an incredible feeling for a story to finally find a home after all of that. So yeah, the writing god smiled down on me and reminded me that we have a lot to live up to throughout the rest of the year, I guess. I also went to a couple of virtual events, which is something I griped about in earlier videos, not getting my act together during COVID. But this quarter, I attended a workshop for science fiction and fantasy with my chapter of the Maryland Writers Association. It was called Purple Grass and Green Cows: How to Create Believable Worlds in Science Fiction and Fantasy. And it was fun, and it basically went through a lot of the details of having to ask yourself a lot of specific questions when it comes to thinking about everything from geography and clothing to cultural and religious touchstones, or also magical creatures touchstones if you have, new creatures in your world, or, if you're going into sci-fi, you have to think about space travel and how the technology intersects with the community. And this is also stuff that could be applicable to other genres as well, particularly, I guess, historical fiction. Although for that, you're, I guess, more discovering the answers than, making them up. And then the next big online event I attended was actually a writers' conference, one that gravitated toward the Zoom. It was with the Eastern Shore Writers Association, a local writers association that I don't actually, I'm not a member of because I don't live in that area, but I live close. And they were online, and I thought I really want to get a little bit of that feel again of being able to go to a writers' conference and go to these sessions and just have the Zoom take me to breakout rooms or what have you. So it was a lot of fun. I actually talked about it a bit on my reading and writing blog this month. And I would encourage any writers who, need to feel a community that you can go ahead and try what's going on online. I think a lot of it really has mapped well to the virtual landscape. This second section might seem a little counterintuitive because I mostly do these videos to talk about my fiction writing, but on my blogs I write nonfiction. But that being said, my blog writing is a big part of my writing output, month to month, quarter to quarter, what have you. I have 3 blogs, and I update each of them at least once each month. And then in this section, I pick out my favorite 3 posts that I wrote in the last quarter. So I thought this time I would start with Jewish DC, which is a blog I write chronicling Jewish events happening in the DC area. I started out the month with mostly announcement posts, like, you know, these are the types of things that are happening for this or that holiday. But this month in March, I was able to actually attend an event, again on Zoom, taking advantage at last. I attended a class for Passover where a few people associated with the organization Sixth and I did PowerPoint presentations on sort of talking points throughout the Seder. And it was really, really interesting, and the conversation was really robust. I mean, you can still do that on Zoom, both in the written and the oral chatting. And it really, I really liked it, and it opened up my eyes to fresh ideas for the holiday, and I recapped it on Jewish DC. Hava's Footsteps is a broader blog. I often write about Jewish issues and often also pop culture issues on that blog. And this quarter really was the quarter of the expanse for me. That's predominantly what I wrote about in far more than one post for season 5. And in fact, I started out the year writing about the expanse in mid-season. And I compared it a little bit to Game of Thrones, specifically having to do with one storyline, storyline to storyline. This season, I'm going to give a little bit of spoiler for season 5 of The Expanse, but Naomi's storyline took her into conflict, as it were, with her ex-lover Marco, who then, you know, took her prisoner, as you do. He's a bit of a villain that way. The idea of the female character getting kidnapped by a jilted ex-lover or otherwise, you know, held hostage isn't new, and it made me think of what had happened in Game of Thrones, particularly with Ramsay holding Sansa hostage in Game of Thrones Season 5. And that really started a firestorm in some parts of the fandom because it depicted Ramsay raping Sansa, and people weren't so thrilled with that, and talked about the idea of why these sort of storylines have to exist, where over and over again we show women being the victims of sexual violence. And I pretty much figured, even though we had half of the season of The Expanse left, that sexual violence wouldn't be a part of Naomi's storyline, even though she was being held hostage by a jilted lover. So I decided to explore that a little bit in this blog post. In a way, it doesn't feel completely complete, because I could have gone into more detail, well, I guess about Game of Thrones. I think I went into enough detail about The Expanse, and technically it was more of an Expanse post than a Game of Thrones post. But I'm also giving myself props just for doing something, you know, a little original and unique in terms of comparative TV studies, as it were. And then finally, I have my reading and writing blog. I already talked about some things that I wrote about on the blog earlier in this video, so I decided to highlight something different, something more in the reading realm of things, and that has to do with the public domain. 2021 is the year when some really significant titles made it into the public domain, including The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald and Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. So I took a little bit of a moment to brainstorm sort of retellings that I'd like to hear. I basically just went into the mindset of what characters I would like to hear from in the original stories. Not so much into, I don't know, creating entirely different settings, which I think a lot of people are starting to do with those types of stories. At least there's a science fiction Asian-inspired one with following a Jordan Baker character. And then there's also one that is more of a retelling. It's retelling The Great Gatsby from Nick, which is weird because Nick told The Great Gatsby in the original. Although he wasn't really narrating his own life, so, you know, that's something. So anyway, I had a bit of fun with that one as well. And now into the meat and potatoes, where I recap my winter 2021 goals and see what becomes of me. Starting with goal number 1, which was to attend a flash fiction magazine master's class, because last year I had a flash fiction story published in Flash Fiction magazine, and they encouraged me to attend one of their classes. But that being said, I decided not to go ahead with this goal because I'm not really writing any more flash fiction at the moment. And so I decided it would be more of a distraction and more of me taking even more time away from the writing that I should be doing to do something else. So I decided to nix that goal. Goal number 2 is to prepare and send a query letter for my literary fiction novella, The Corners. I was preparing a specific query letter for a specific publisher that's been on my mind, and I did that, and I sent off my manuscript. And now I have to tell myself to stop checking Submittable so often, because it's certainly going to take them at least a couple of months to get back to me on this. So don't jinx yourself, self. Go on to another writing project. And with that in mind, goal number 3 is a repeating one. Finished Act 2A of Fantasy Project. And, well...
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Man, she found me even though I moved! She's so good! Ah, well, better luck next time, I guess. That's the nice thing about the endings of these videos. I always have a chance to redeem myself and move forward. And with that in mind, I move into my final part of this video, the Spring 2021 Goals Announcement, where I am setting 3 new goals for myself. Goal number 1 is to contact my writers group. Once upon a time, starting in 2017, I had an in-person live meetup writing group through the Capitol Hill Writers Group Association, where we would meet hopefully every 2 to 3 weeks to workshop each other's stuff. We've been pretty much completely dormant since COVID came around, and we're not able to move our operations online. I think several months ago I checked in with people last just to say hi and how you doing and that sort of thing. But we have a very specific reason, I think, to get back in touch soon. Well, maybe 2 reasons even. Hopefully soon we could even think about meeting in person again once we're all vaccinated, so just keeping that as a hopeful on the table. But another reason is because one of our members, Lacey, is having her book published at the end of this quarter in mid-June. Of course, I went ahead and I pre-ordered it, and I'm following her, new authors page on Facebook and all of that. And I really want to track her down because I want a signature, damn it. I want a signed book, as it were, and of course the chance to be able to celebrate this with her. I'm sure there'll be a virtual launch party or something as well, but I feel like this is an excuse, if anything is, to really get the group back together again, at least to, congratulate her. She can be our inspiration for workshopping new projects forward. And speaking of projects I'm working on, I've decided at long last, after too many failures, to do away with the vague finish act, goal. And my new goal number 2 is to rewrite my fantasy project chapters, which is a bit more specific. Back in NaNoWriMo, I wrote several chapters of Act 2. They grow increasingly less chapter-like and more outline-like as I go, and needed to think up new information. And I figured a good way to get me into the revamping and writing a much more real draft 1 would to be go chapter by chapter and figure out what exactly in that chapter needs to be expanded upon in terms of world building and secondary characters and what have you. And finally, goal number 3 is to do some character profiles of Act 2 folks who become much more of a big deal or are introduced in Act 2 of my fantasy project, A Song of the Wanderers. I went ahead through the classes and conference I mentioned earlier, and we did some brainstorming and workshopping, and I did a little bit of a profile of an antagonist, and the world building MWA panel came with complete with some character sheets that could be of interest, and I figure that would be very helpful in, fleshing out the important parts of this story, because I am of the belief that characters come first, and so when you flesh out subplots, you really need a strong character to move that action along. So get to it, self! So, that about covers it for me now. You can find links to everything I've mentioned in this video down below. I should be back on this channel, I guess in this location I'm hoping, very soon to discuss the BookTube Prize, which as of filming this, Robert announced the octafinals winners and the quarterfinals groupings this morning. So we are moving high speed ahead into the second act of this literary prize for the BookTube community. And I'm so excited, and I have to talk about my ranking for the octafinals, and then in another video later this week I will talk about my thoughts about my quarterfinals ballot. So stay tuned. Hope you are all looking forward to a blooming and hopefully soon vaccinated spring, if you're not vaccinated already, that is. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Guess I'll have to raise this hand. Keep writing, and I'll see you next time.